Hi, everyone. We are going to review the answers to passage 2 and I won't be reading any of the passages, answers, and explanations for that. But before I go through passage 2, I do want to finish question 15 on passage 1 when we were doing the test taking tidbits and explanation. Part of the video got cut off, so I want to make sure everyone has the answer to this. So the answer for 15, when we were talking about the men, the Egyptian ship replica, the answer would have been or is C. So let me read the question again. Suppose the writer's primary purpose had been to instruct the reader how to build a replica of an ancient ship. Would this essay accomplish that purpose? Your clue here is suppose. I believe I said that in the last video, which sort of gives you the idea that no, the passage didn't talk about that, but you never know on these questions. But that may give you a clue. So first of all, when you read questions like this, you have to decide whether or not you agree or disagree, or whether you think the answer is a yes answer or a no answer. Once you decide that, I think the example I gave in the last video is, yes, I decided that my answer is yes. You only really have to deal with 2 of these answer choices, and you can eliminate 2 for the time being. So you would read each one of these yes answers, and if they fit, you would choose one of them. If neither fit, then you would go to your no. And here, C is the best choice because the writer instead emphasizes the inspiration for and the significance of a particular replica. So that's what the essay actually discussed, and it was not to instruct you on how to build that replica. So that's why it is answer choice C. Okay, so let's move on to passage 2. An Italian garden in California. So number 16 would have been J, unlike. The narrator here is comparing their grandparents' yard or garden compared to their small yard or garden that they have near their house. Number 17, excuse me. Number 17, which of the following choices best indicates the disorder of the garden? So notice that your answer choices, contradictory, stormy, blatant, these all have some sort of, at first hearing of them, have some sort of negative connotation, or maybe may cause some disorder or disagreement. But you're trying to figure out which one of these vocabulary terms would best fit in this sentence. And so their yard, I'm going to start here, their yard was a huge, unruly garden, like a neighborhood park that had been taken over by flowers and weeds. So here the answer choice would be A, because unruly best describes how the garden looked. Even though they are almost synonyms of each other, unruly would be the best fit here. And it best indicates, again, looking at that verb after the best choice or most effectively after those type of phrases. Number 18, your answer would be G. And it's a very slight change. So if you look at this sentence, Grandpa worked in his garden every day, planting and pruning, mixing and staking, weeding and mulching. These are 3 separate activities, but it's a combo for each. So the first activity or the first thing that Grandpa did was planting and pruning. The next thing he did was mixing and staking. And then the third thing he did was weeding and mulching. If you note here, And again, if they use the exact same wording, but they're changing the punctuation, so you need to make sure that you make note of the punctuation within the original text. So here, there is no, you really don't need a separation between planting and pruning. So there's not 4 activities, because if you look at these last 2, they're combo activities. So for consistency, you would take out this comma, and the answer would be G, because it doesn't separate those 2. Number 19. If the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, this paragraph would primarily lose a statement that. So if you look at 19 and you take out the sentence that, goes above this, so this is all of the sentence that I just read. Grandpa worked in his garden every day, planting and pruning, mixing and staking, weeding and mulching. So I wondered why it looked so wild and overgrown. If you just leave it at weeds and how it looked like this neighborhood park that had been taken over, you would lose the explanation why the appearance of the garden, or explains why the appearance of the garden puzzled the narrator. You would lose that. And if you look at answer choice B, illustrates why the garden appeared wild and overgrown, we really haven't talked about why Grandpa, or should I say the narrator, we haven't read yet why the narrator, or if the narrator will discuss in this video, if the narrator will discuss why it looks the way it looks. C, establishes that the grandfather resented the amount of work that the garden required. We haven't gotten to that point yet, whether or not he had some sort of emotion or feeling about it. And then describes the varieties of plants and flowers that grew in the garden. That doesn't come until later. So it would be letter A. Excuse me. Number 20. Here you're looking at the word certainly. Certainly, Grandpa told myself that the way he grew fruits, vegetables, and herbs conserved space and water. So this is the reason why he does what he does. This certainly is stating, of course he would say something. He most assuredly will give the narrator an answer. That may not necessarily be true. It happens in this case that H is the correct answer. Eventually, Grandpa told me that. For number 21, letter D would be the correct answer choice. And I did that because I hope, as suggested in the first video, you read these 2 together, because they are 2 underlined questions in the same sentence. So for 20, it would have been H eventually. 21, it would have been D. You would replace that phrase with me that. Okay, and number 22 is in the last part of that paragraph. Scroll back up. His plantings are complementing each other and were in harmony with the seasons, the sun, and the acidity and moisture of the soil. Here, your answer choice would have been H. Complemented each other and were, because the tense here that's being used throughout the passage is past tense. So ED and were would recognize that in this particular sentence. Number 23. Your answer choice would be A, no change. Excuse me. And this is why. A, the correct answer. B, incorrect, because not only and the addition of but also just gets too wordy. And we know that's not how the ACT is formatted. C, either the seasons, the sun, and the acidity and moisture, either indicates there's a choice there. And reading this, Grandpa plants the way he plants, because it's in harmony with all three of them. So we wouldn't choose anything. So C would not be the answer choice. And D, where it says both the seasons, the sun, and the acidity and moisture of the soil, there are three separate things that he's trying to put his plants in harmony with. Both indicates that there's only two, so D would be incorrect. So A is your choice. Okay, number 24. Number 24 would be H with a semicolon, because these citrus trees grew in the sunniest parts of the yard. They flourish while providing shade for garlic and mint plants below. These are two independent clauses. The author felt that they were important to put together, but did not want to add a conjunction or start a brand new sentence. Like, you needed to put this information together, so you only need separate it by a semicolon. Number 25, the answer is D, kneading. Excuse me. Here in this sentence, let's go back up to sentence starting with almond. Almond, peach, and cherry trees near the citrus, due to the fact that they were needing as much sun but more nutrients, were mulched with mounds of compost that Grandpa would mix himself. It's really wordy here. So if we replace it with D, almond, peach, and cherry trees near the citrus, needing as much sun but more nutrients, were mulched with mounds of compost that Grandpa would mix himself. So here, this would make the sentence read, would communicate the point in the most concise manner. So that's why D would be the correct answer. Okay. 26. The best placement for the underlined portion would be. So the underlined portion here, let me read the sentence beginning with fig. Fig, pear, and persimmon trees were scattered, easy growing throughout the yard. It just sounds odd where it is if you read it. It just sounds odd where it is. So if we leave it there now, maybe, but it sounds weird. G, before the word fig, adjusting the capitalization as needed. So let's put it here. Easy growing fig, pear, and persimmon trees were scattered throughout the yard. Makes perfect sense. I understand what kind of trees there were and how they grow. H, after the word persimmon. Fig, pear, and persimmon easy growing trees were scattered throughout the yard. Well, it makes it sound like almost like the persimmon trees were the only ones that were easy growing. So, and it seems odd there, so it would not go after persimmon. So H would not be an answer choice. And for J, after the word were, trees were easy growing scattered. It doesn't make any sense if it's placed there. So your answer choice would be G. 27. Your answer choice, would be A, no change. Muddy and rutted are the adjectives that are describing the paths. You don't need an extra pause in between paths, rutted and paths, and so that would eliminate B and C. And there's no need for a pause in letter choice D between paths and lead. So we would leave it at the way it is, and it would be answer choice A. 28. Answer choice for 28 would be no change. Here again, if it is worded with the same exact wording or phrasing, of course they're going to change the punctuation. So you would have to look, make sure that you know what the original punctuation is in the original sentence. And this would be correct, and I'll tell you why there's no change on this one. Hyphens are normally used in pairs. So having this hyphen here and no hyphen on the end would eliminate G. If you look at this sentence, salad greens and herbs, that's the subject. Then it says, such as arugula, Swiss chard, black kale, rapini, sage, and oregano, shared one large plot, given their similar moisture requirements. Salad greens and herbs, and if you take out all of the rest that's underlined, shared one large plot, given their similar moisture requirements, you really could have a complete sentence. The reason you need the comma after herbs and after oregano is because the such as. Because such as is there, it eliminates these answer choices here. So herbs such as arugula, see they don't put that comma on the end of oregano, you would need that. So that eliminates H. They don't put the comma on the end of oregano, so that, and they also have a semicolon here in J, so that eliminates it because that would indicate that there was, an independent clause coming after that, and there's not. Let's go down to 29 and 30. To 29, which choice most effectively suggests that as an adult, the narrator continued to discover new information about the grandfather's garden? So here's that phrase again, most effectively. What is the verb? Suggest. And what is the question asking? Suggest what? Discover new information. So let's look at this. Meanwhile, I wouldn't necessarily use meanwhile because it means two things are going on simultaneously. They're saying continue to discover new information. So that means as time went on, and that's your clue in that question. So the best answer choice would be B, years later. Years later, I learned that my grandpa's garden, his orto, was much like the orto in that his own grandfather had cultivated in southern Italy. So years later would be the best choice here. In short would indicate some sort of summary, and however would indicate that there's some sort of shift or change in what you're talking about, and that's not what the question is asking. So again, B would be your best answer choice. And the last one for this section, again, question 30, it says, ask about the preceding passage as a whole. So you have to think about the whole entire content that's been given to you. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the essay. So again, pause for a minute. My parents' tidy rows of flowers required more watering and chemicals than his garden did, he said. So just think about it, because you can kind of scan and see, again, like I said in the first video, those numbers and those letters are given to give you location, to give you quick reference. So where would I put this? Where in the content or in the passage did they actually discuss how things were planted, or their garden versus the grandfather's garden? And really, if you could just go and kind of scan at this point, you can kind of scan, was it in the beginning, was it in the second paragraph, was it in the third? So your answer choice for that would be G. And this is for placement and cohesion. So if you wanted it to flow very nicely, you would put it back in paragraph 2 at point B. And let's go there very quickly. Here we go. So let's read it and it's correct. So eventually, Grandpa told me that the way he grew fruits and vegetables and herbs conserved space and water. So if I put it at point B, that sentence would make sense, because it says, and I'll read it just while you're looking at this. My parents' tidy rows of flowers required more watering and chemicals than his garden did, he said. His plantings complemented each other and were in harmony with the seasons, the sun, and the acidity and moisture of the soil. So putting it here in at point B would make sense because they're talking about why Grandpa actually grew the plants and fruits and vegetables the way he did, and their placement and why it was important. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them on the discussion board or message board, and we'll get back to you. All right, thanks so much for joining us.